Today we start the 8th chapter of the second act. We'll dive right into it. May this reading relax your mind and awaken your heart. After leaving Calcutta, I made the long journey west across the Indian subcontinent to Bombay, where Goenkaji was teaching another course. It took me 2.5 days to reach Bombay by train. On the train, I meditated on the picture of the blue boy playing a flute. I want to show you that picture again. Make it an interactive experience. Where is it? Wasn't it that? Yes, here it is. Day by day, a special attraction grew toward him, and I wondered again when it would be revealed to me who this was. Once in Bombay, studying with Goenka, I was again impressed with how he put his life into helping us to learn. When a teacher puts his or her life into the lesson like that, students can't help but be inspired to put their life into learning. After the 10-day course, I had an overwhelming urge to stretch my legs and take a long walk around the city. For several hours, I walked with no particular direction. Suddenly, I found myself stuck at a red light in a crossroads of bustling traffic. As horns blared, a river of pedestrians flowed around me. There were men with suits, ties, and briefcases jumbled together with raggedly dressed street urchins and beggars, ladies in bright saris, hawkers peddling their wares, and elderly men dressed in traditional Gandhian attire. People with skin of dark brown, light tan, and those whose skin was bleached and splotched by white leprosy, all hustled in the traffic along with several European tourists who wore jeans and mini skirts. Behind us were modern high-rises, side by side with Victorian bungalows and shanty huts. As the sun shone brightly in a clear sky, I looked upward and took note of a huge billboard painted with bold red letters that advertised a spiritual festival at Cross Maiden. Cross Maiden is an expansive park in downtown Bombay. At the park, a gigantic pandal tent was erected. Entering, I found myself in a world of colors. Posters of Indian art hung from the red, green, and yellow striped walls of the tent. Swirls of smoke rose from pungent incense sticks. My eyes then scanned over a long table of books. Suddenly I was captivated by the cover of one in particular. My heart leapt. The picture showed the beautiful blue boy holding a flute. Enticed, I whispered, "That's him." Yes, that's him, I thought. Not knowing who he was, I had carried my picture of him all over India. Now that the same person was again appearing before me. In bold red letters, the title of the book proclaimed itself. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I softly cried out, "Krishna! His name is Krishna!" The long-awaited mystery was now revealed. Eager to learn more about him, I asked if I could look through the book. A Western monk with shaved head and white robe stood behind the table. Taken aback, he asked, "You speak English?" "Yes, I'm from America." I eagerly reached out for the book. "Really? You're not Indian? Are you a worshipper of Shiva?" He placed the book in my hands. "I don't really know what I am, but I lived with Shaivites." "My name is Tusta," he said. "Here's a chapter I think you'll find interesting. It's about the relationship between Shiva and Krishna." I wondered why he was so surprised to learn that I was from America. I hadn't seen myself in a mirror for a long time, and had not realized until now that, with my brown eyes and relatively dark complexion, long matted hair, and river-stained robes, perhaps I had come to look just like an Indian mendicant. Embracing the book to my heart, I wandered to a quiet place, and, as a man parched from thirst drinks from an oasis of cool water, I read the Krishna book. It began, "In the Western countries, when someone sees the cover of a book like Krishna, he immediately asks, 'Who is Krishna?'" It went on to explain that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and that the name Krishna meant all attractive. Because God possesses all wealth, power, fame, beauty, wisdom, and renunciation to an unlimited degree, he is all attractive. As I read, a young American woman draped in a yellow sari sat on the stage singing beautiful devotional songs. Her name, I would learn later, was Yamuna Devi. Absorbed in both reading the Krishna book and listening to her soul-stirring song, I was overcome with emotion. As evening approached, the pandal filled over 25,000 people. Eager to hear the speaker, I returned the book and sat in the rear corner of the massive crowd. On the stage, about 20 Western devotees chanted and danced, the shaven-headed men wearing the traditional robes of a sadhu, and the women wearing colorful saris. The whole crowd was anticipating the coming of the Guru. To everyone's deep satisfaction, he soon appeared on the stage. He was a regal man with shaven head and saffron robes, and his body glowed. He walked with the grace of a swan and gestured with the confidence of a king. Still, his demeanor was meek and humble, as if he were seeing God everywhere he looked. After welcoming the audience with joined palms, he sat on an elevated seat. At the far back of the crowd, I could barely see. I yearned to be closer, but felt ashamed to step in front of anyone else. Up on the stage, I could see one devotee moving from side to side, taking photos. The Guru called him over and spoke in his ear. The devotee then gazed into the massive crowd, looking from side to side until he spotted the person he was looking for. Again and again he signaled to someone in the multitude to come up onto the stage, but when nobody came, he finally descended into the crowd. Painstakingly, he tried to pass through the tens of thousands of people seated on the ground. To my surprise, he walked all the way to the rear, and right up to me. Then, with a calm smile, he announced, "Srila Prabhupada wants you to sit with him on stage." Stunned, I mumbled, "How does he know me?" He gave no reply, but simply took me by the hand and pulled me through the masses and onto the stage. There, he presented me before the Guru, whose oceanic smile flooded me with joy. Srila Prabhupada looked so familiar, but I didn't know why. Sitting cross-legged with back erect, he was dressed in the neatly arranged saffron robes of a Swami. With a wave of his hand, he graciously motioned for me to sit near to him. So I took my seat on the carpeted stage. In awe, I looked up at him. His large, gentle eyes briefly studied mine with a glance that touched my soul. His complexion was bronze, his nose wide and rounded, and his drooping ears were like the ears of Lord Buddha. From his recently shaved head, short white hairs had grown out on either side, and 2 vertical lines of yellow clay representing the yogic path of devotion adorned his forehead. 2 deep creases sloped down from the sides of his nose to the corners of his full, sculpted lips. There is a picture of him earlier in this book too, I can show you. There he is. Sorry for the reflection. As the devotees jubilantly danced and sang, their robes clean and bright, I became aware of my own robes, tattered and stained by the mud of the rivers. Whereas the devotee men had freshly shaven heads and faces, I could not even remember the last time I shaved my face, not to speak of cutting or combing my hair. Having bathed in a river or muddy pond each day, I must have appeared filthy in their presence. While they sang and danced jubilantly, I sat in silence. Habituated to residing in secluded forests, now here I was sitting on a stage with tens of thousands of people looking on. Feeling self-conscious and extremely out of place, I was about to flee. But then Srila Prabhupada cast such an assuring, affectionate smile upon me that I instantly felt right at home. Why had this man called me up to sit with him? Me, of all people. As I pondered this mystery, Srila Prabhupada picked up a pair of finger cymbals. Not unlike these ones, I'm sure. And began to tap them together, each of his fingers moving with meticulous grace as a steady rhythm rang out. In a deep, resonant voice, his body swaying gently, he began to chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I gasped. It was like a dream to hear him chanting the very same mantra I had heard from the song of Mother Ganga. How often had I chanted this mantra since that day in Rishikesh, when the river had revealed it to me? A tingle shot up my spine, shivers rushed through my limbs, and my heart pounded like a kettle drum. Through tear-filled eyes, I gazed up at Srila Prabhupada, whose eyes were tightly shut, eyebrows tensed, his lips arched downward as the mantra poured out from them. The massive crowd sang in response. The devotees on stage played traditional drums, cymbals, and gongs as the tent resonated with the sound of the mantra. After the chanting, Srila Prabhupada cleared his throat and spoke into the microphone in a deep, resonant voice, explaining the meaning of the mantra. We are singing the Maha Mantra, or the great chanting for deliverance. He then described that the name Hare was an invocation for Radha, the divine energy or female counterpart of the Lord. It is she that is the origin and giver of the love of God. Krishna is the name of God that means he is all attractive, and the name Rama means the Lord is the supreme enjoyer and bestows unending bliss to those who offer him their love. He went on to explain that transcendental sound vibration cleansed the heart of selfish desires and awakened our original, natural love for God, bringing about spiritual happiness. While chanting the Maha Mantra, Srila Prabhupada continued, We are praying to the Lord. Please engage me in your loving service eternally. My mind flew back to the Himalayas and to that rock in Mother Ganga. I finally understood. These were the names of that beautiful blue boy playing the flute, the one who had appeared to me in the painting, and he was a form of God. All along, I had been chanting the mantra and meditating on the painting, having no clue of the connection. Now Srila Prabhupada had revealed very simply the sacred mysteries that I had pondered for so long. My mind soared in amazement as I observed the adventures of my quest unfolding. Smiling, I redirected my attention to the words of Srila Prabhupada. He confidently explained how true religion was not the poverty of any property. True religion was not the property of any sect, caste, or creed, but the nature of all living beings. Our nature, he said, is to love God, but this love has been forgotten since time immemorial. Such love of God must be unconditional to completely satisfy the self. We are spirit souls, he said, but in ignorance we identify this temporary body with the self. He went on to explain how the cause of all suffering was forgetfulness of our relationship with God, and how this consciousness could be easily awakened by the chanting of God's names. In a voice brimming with compassion, he pleaded with the audience to take his message seriously, or this message seriously. This process, he said, which revives our dormant love of God, is called Bhakti Yoga. As Srila Prabhupada was speaking, I heard a voice within my heart proclaim, "This is your Guru." But my mind could not accept it. A battle ensued between my brain and my heart. There are many saints and gurus I have met in the past, and I will meet more in the future. I can't be hasty. This is the most important decision of my life. I must be sure before committing myself to any particular path. My mind won the battle, and, still confused, I dismissed the idea that I was ready to choose a guru. After his lecture, as he was leaving, Srila Prabhupada stopped directly in front of me. Bustling crowds were gathered around us, and my mind was exploding with excitement. I spontaneously fell to my knees and extended my hand to touch his feet. A thunderous voice shouted, "No one touches Prabhupada's feet." Struck with shame, I retracted my hand, but Srila Prabhupada looked deeply into my eyes. I sensed that he could feel the pain of my shame and felt responsible for the cutting words of his disciple. I felt a wave of affection pouring out from him. Then, with a beaming smile, he gently spoke, "You may touch my feet." Feeling both relieved and honored, I placed the dust of his feet on my head. He rubbed my head affectionately and invited me to sit on the stage with him each morning and evening. His kindness left me speechless. The next morning, after the lecture, I waited in line with hundreds of people to receive breakfast, a popular Indian sweet called halava. Not having eaten in a day, I was hungry. Finally, after about an hour, I reached the front of the line where a leaf cup brimming over with fresh hot halava was placed into my hand. What a blessing! I could hardly wait. But out of the blue, my halava was snatched away. What just happened? My adrenaline rushed and stomach burned in dismay. as I turned around. There, I saw the same devotee who had brought me onto the stage the night before with my halva in his hand. His name was Gurudas. "You're not going to eat this, are you?" he asked. "I thought I would," I said, a little indignantly. Right before my eyes, he handed my long-awaited breakfast to someone else. Then, grasping my hand, he pulled me away. Moments later, I was seated behind the stage where a calm American woman named Malati Devi put a plate in front of me. It was a feast with 12 varieties of sacred vegetarian food. Gurudas smiled. "This is better for your health. We just want to make you happy." Examining me, he boldly stated, "You're a devotee. Someday you'll understand." Sitting beside me was an American devotee named Shyama Sundar, who struck up a friendly conversation. He was so easy to talk to, and I had a strange feeling that I knew this man. Suddenly it dawned on me that this was the monk I had encountered at the Cosmos Club in Amsterdam, the one who had ladled the fruit and yogurt into my hands, asking if I wanted spiritual food. When I reminded him about it, he laughed loudly, saying, "Oh, that was you. Everyone else had a bowl. I'm sorry about that." As we talked, his wife Malati brought more and more sacred food until I begged her to stop. Meanwhile, their 4-year-old daughter, Saraswati, frolicked in and out of the backstage. Her striking blonde hair, sparkling blue eyes, and unabashed enthusiasm was a wonder to the Indian people. I drank in the scene, eagerly breaking my fast. It is said that a saintly person is so pure that he or she acts like a spotless mirror. When we come in the presence of such a mirror-like soul, we can see both the beauty and ugliness of our inner life. Our faith and doubts, virtues and sins, strengths and weaknesses are revealed. It is both a joyful and painful experience, one that I had in the presence of Srila Prabhupada. One evening, as he lectured, the seriousness of his demeanor induced me to question my own sincerity. How genuine is my motivation? Am I taking responsibility for my own life and that of others? Why have I not yet found a particular path? Is it fear of commitment or frivolity? What uncertain future is this life leading me into? At the moment these thoughts were running through my head, from his high seat, in the presence of thousands of onlookers, Srila Prabhupada fixed his eyes into mine. Locked in his gaze, I felt the massive crowd blur into oblivion. It seemed that nobody existed except him and me. I could feel his eyes penetrating into the depths of my soul and silently speaking through my heart, "Do not waste precious time. Krishna is waiting for you." I trembled in gratitude, but knew that I would soon leave. In my confusion, I felt it the honest thing to do. The experience of those days with him had been incredible, but my faith was still like an anchorless boat on a stormy sea. My fear of commitment and a stirring in my heart to see more places and meet more enlightened beings impelled me to move on. Yes, I thought, a deep conviction in both my intellect and heart must come before I can honestly accept a particular path or guru. I believed that God would eventually reveal my destiny. Overwhelmed by Srila Prabhupada's wisdom and compassion, I wanted to buy his Krishna book before leaving Bombay. I had no money, so to afford it, I took to the streets of Bombay to beg. But I was too shy to be a good beggar. Pained and intimidated, I tried but couldn't raise enough. On the last day of the festival, a disciple brought me before Srila Prabhupada. He stood in the sunshine outside the tent. His head was slightly tilted upward, his back straight, and both his hands gripped the handle of his wooden cane, which he touched to the ground between his feet. His large eyes gazed into mine, and his downward slanting lips highlighted his grave demeanor. "Yes?" he asked. The disciple said, "This boy wants your new book so badly. He's been begging in the streets with hope to buy it." Srila Prabhupada was so touched that with his own hands he gave me a copy of the book. His eyes flooded with kindness, and he patted my head and softly said, "Thank you very much." "Thank you very much," my heart echoed. I bowed my head in reverence. And that is the end of the 8th chapter of the 2nd act. In fact, it's the end of the 2nd act. So thank you for coming this far with me in our journey through reading this book. Next time we'll begin the 3rd act, Himalayan Pilgrimage. I sense a yatra. Thank you very much for listening with me, my dear viewers. If there is anything you wish to explore with me in the context of the story so far, I certainly invite room for reflections